All right, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you and I, we've been able to get to know each other a lot better over this last whole course of getting this tour together. But I want to start from the beginning. It's like I want to learn for me. I want to learn for everybody. When did you first fall in love with music? When did you first start noticing an attraction in music? When did you start digging what you heard and what you saw?
Yeah. Well, I grew up around music. My dad was always playing music in the house. He was a huge rock fan, from 70s and 80s kind of rock. He always had music playing. He always had vinyls going in the house. So I kind of just grew up around rock music anyways, which is kind of cool. At the time, you don't notice it or appreciate it. It's just kind of your background noise to your childhood, you know?
Hmm.
But when I was 12 years old, myself, my mum, my dad, my sisters, we all went out on a family kind of night out to watch a gig together. And it was Meatloaf. And it was in Cardiff Arena, which we're going to be playing together a couple of times very soon. Um, and yeah, and that moment did something to me. Just hearing the volume, seeing the production, being part of a crowd and an energy and a vibe, and that just the whole thing about being in a gig. It just something happened in my head, and I was like, shit, okay, cool. I didn't know it at the time because I was only 12. But I was dragged there kicking and screaming, and when I left, I was just totally fell in love with rock and roll and music and production and live music, and that was it. And then from the age of about 14, that's all I ever wanted to do was be a musician, be in a band, be a rock star, be James Hetfield, kind of the stuff that we all have at that age. And yeah, I just kept that dream alive and did everything I could to make it reality, you know. And it took a very long time. And it's a dream that you have when you're 14 years old. There's no guarantee of anything, especially in the music industry. It's hard, you know. It doesn't matter how talented you are or gifted as a song. That doesn't mean shit. Making it a career, you know, as we all know, it's hard. But I just think perseverance and keeping that belief in my ability as a musician, as a songwriter, and with the band, and just had a dream and just wasn't satisfied until I'd accomplished that, you know. And I think it requires that determination to get anywhere in this industry. You know, you've got to be dedicated because you're risking everything for potentially nothing, you know.
Absolutely. What was your first time picking up an instrument, or did you form a band earlier on, or was there like a family member that played instruments?
I think the first instrument I picked up was the guitar when I was probably about 4 or 5. My dad got me a kind of three-quarter classical, as most mums or dads do when you're that age, trying to get your kid into an instrument. And I think I was kind of he was giving opportunities to me that he always wanted as a kid but never had. Um, and yeah, and then after that, I didn't do anything with it at the time. It was just kind of just strumming and just making noise. But then he actually bought me a drum kit. So from 8 years old till about 14, 15, I was a drummer. And
Wow.
in my first band, I was a drummer. And yeah, just kind of fell in love with the note. You know, there's something cool about being a kid and smashing a drum kit. You know, it's a magic moment. It's very simple, very primal, but it was magical. You know, and yeah, and then obviously I just kind of my ears pricked up to music and guitar sounds and heard Metallica on MTV when I was 14, and that was it. Game over. My life was all pre-planned out from that point. You know.
That's awesome. So when you get into Metallica and
Yeah.
you start jamming and stuff, what were some of the other bands that started drawing you towards what you would eventually get into, and what was that? Like, where did you find your musical taste starting to skew and grow into?
Well, it started off. Metallica was kind of the starting point for everything, really. And at that time as well, grunge was huge. Nirvana was kind of the biggest thing ever. But it was around that time where, you know, Kurt like committed suicide. So it was just this mashup of of genres, really, like of 90s, late 80s and 90s metal, grunge, punk rock. I just kind of, as long as it had guitars and attitude and it was exciting, I was into it. You know, I wasn't really kind of too biased about the music I was listening to. It was just whatever had attitude and a sound and that raw, rock and roll, man. It was just all about the guitar and the tones. That was my ears just found it exciting,
Yeah.
you know. And as soon as I picked up a guitar, then after I started to fall in love with music, it was then you started to kind of channel it towards the heavy metal scene, you know.
Hmm. That's cool. First, and then what were the first batch of dudes you met to like put together, make music, and what was like maybe your first show
The
that you
first
played?
guys that yeah, the first band I was in was I found a drummer in a local newspaper, because this was like pre-internet and all that kind of crazy shit, which is probably blow people's minds to hear that are of a certain age. But we had a local newspaper, and there'd be advertisements in there, you know, guitarist wanted, drummer wanted, looking to jam, just, you know. And I just found this kid who was a couple of years younger than me at the time. I think I was around 14 and he was 12. So I just picked up the phone and called him. My parents called him. We arranged like a jam date. Um, and he was wild good. So it was like, oh, okay. And even by 14, 15, I picked up the guitar really quick and I was riffing away pretty happily, even at 14 years old. And this kid was 12 and he was really good. He'd had lessons. He'd grown up around learning the instrument properly. Um, and yeah, and then we eventually got a bass player, and we would just get together every Sunday afternoon and just play music, just play covers and just have fun. And that was my first introduction to playing with other people. And in school, then when kind of the other guys started to get into music, and it became this group of people like myself and Padge and Moose and all the boys, we had our little group of guys that were just fell in love with metal. I think Korn's first album came out around that first time as well. So it was just a really exciting time and a really influential time in our lives to be like 14 years old, to be surrounded and immersed in all this kind of amazing new music that we were discovering. And little did we know that at that time, especially with bands like Korn and Slipknot, they would still be here all this time later. And they were just starting off in baby bands.
It is
Yeah, it's
crazy
just,
to
just
look
a
at
really
those
exciting
bands.
time.
It is crazy to
Yeah,
look at how massive both those bands have gotten. Like Korn is bigger than ever now. Slipknot's like a cultural phenomenon. It's so cool to see
yeah,
those things we were into when we were like 13, 14. I still remember when that first Slipknot album came out. So I had my super long hair. I'd hide my headphones underneath my hair. And I'd listen to that first Slipknot record like on repeat in like eighth grade.
yeah, man.
It was actually
Yeah, that
the,
was,
yeah.
it was a magical time. I think it's maybe it's us just getting a little bit older and becoming those people. But I don't think there's been a time in the heavy metal music scenes from that like 99 to 2003 4 time. It was just a really, really interesting, vibrant, exciting time for the genre.
Yeah, it's really cool to see where it all eventually led to as well. What city were you living in at this time? Have you always lived in Wales like your whole life?
Yeah, up until I was 29, I lived in Wales. At that point when I was just living at home in a little town called Bridgend. It's in South Wales, about 2.5 hours from London. Yeah, very small town, typical British and Welsh town. Everyone knows each other. There's a pub, there's a shop, there's a restaurant, and it's a very simple town, very simple way of life back then. And yeah, it was great. It's a very one thing it did have though around that time was a huge, vibrant music scene. And we weren't the only band that was around doing things, local gigs in the pubs and the clubs in the area. No, it was a very vibrant scene, and I think we were lucky enough to be in that, and it really helped inspire us, motivate us, like rivalry, all that kind of stuff, which motivates you. And, yeah, it's good, man. It's and that's where I'm heading tonight. To go see Padge. Padge is still in the area. Um, my parents are still there. My sisters, my whole previous life is all still there.
Yeah, that's awesome. What did it look like? I'm picturing like countrysides, like I'm picturing like kind of grayish skies. Like what was it like? What were you eating back then? What was the stuff you were doing? Like what was the young Tuck doing and eating and seeing?
just just doing everything else that people of my age from my background were doing. We come from a very humble, normal upbringing. There was no silver spoon or kind of major anything. We're from a really small town in Wales. I would hang out most of the time with my friends that were from up the Welsh valleys, which is even more humble, smaller areas. I was kind of more out of the valleys, so about 3 or 4 miles away. Then you start getting into that area, which is amazing. And yeah, it's most of South Wales is all coastal anyway. The whole major cities of South Wales run on the South Wales coast. So you've got Newport, Cardiff, Bridgend, Swansea, Carmarthenshire, all that. It's all coastal. So if you're in South Wales, within 10 minutes you can be on the beach.
Yeah.
So that was awesome to have that on your doorstep. And yeah, countryside, space, quiet. You have a town and you have all that kind of stuff and shops and all that stuff, but there it's very small. And yeah, it hasn't really evolved that much since I left. Really, it's become a bit of a victim to the online kind of shopping
Hmm.
phenomenon that took over the last 20 years. Like shops just went out of business. Everyone's doing their shopping online and stuff. So unfortunately, it took a bit of a hit, as most small British towns have on the high street, where lots of things closed down and the infrastructure kind of got a little bit worse. But yeah, it's just for people that are from the UK and from Wales especially, they can relate to that. It's just it's a very small, humble place to live, but it was a very, very, very cool one at the time.
Yeah, that's
But yeah,
awesome.
it's where I grew up. I've got a huge place in my heart for that town.
That's awesome. It's cool because both of us, you and I, really got into metal through Metallica, Korn, Slipknot. Those were things we started seeing. But another common band that you found big influence from, and we did as well, was Machine Head. When did you get into Machine Head?
Oh
What
yeah.
album was that? Because my first Machine Head record was actually Burning Red on the Year of the Dragon tour, and that was my first metal show I ever saw. So after
Wow.
seeing
Okay.
that Binge and Purge '89 VHS, then seeing Machine Head at the House of Blues in Orlando, I was like, this reaffirmed even more what I want to do. And I remember going home, getting my guitar and like tuning down to like drop D
Oh
or
yeah.
like drop B and start doing stuff. So when did you first kind of discover them?
Yeah, that was probably when I was around 15. It was about a year or so after I picked up a guitar and was kind of discovering music and bands. And I was over at a friend's house who could play guitar, and he was just showing me riffs. It wasn't lessons as such, but he was someone that was doing what I was trying to do, and he was pretty good. And he was showing me riffs. And I remember he said, "If you check this out," and he put Davidian on, and it was like, "Oh fuck, what's this?" It was just like it was complete. It wasn't Metallica, and it wasn't Megadeth, Testament, and all that kind of Slayer and all that stuff, which is amazing. This was different. This was like dirtier, and it was down tuned, and it was just like, and the drum production at the time and just the way the tom sounded and the aggression of it was just like, holy shit. So yeah, that was a huge kind of turning point in my musical journey and in the bands, really. Discovering Machine Head, they were a huge influence growing up. And again, yeah, same thing. That was the first time, I discovered you tune a step down on the bottom string,
Yeah.
because it was bad. I was trying to learn stuff. I was like, it's not the same. I just can't get it to go that low and all this stuff. And then eventually figured out what they were doing, and then it opened a door, and
Yeah.
off you go again, finding other bands that were similar, and everything got more intense and heavy, and then the guitar playing got a little bit more intense and heavy, a bit more experimental. And yeah, I'm like a massively important band for heavy metal, Machine Head.
Absolutely.
Fucking incredible. They were just at that point. Whenever it was in '94, I think Burn My Eyes came out. Absolutely ridiculous record. Even to this day, it sounds fucking savage.
It really does. It really does. And then even getting into like Ashes record was huge. Blackening record was huge. Like those things really got me. And I was like, oh wow, this is
Yeah.
where else you can go. When did you first meet some of the other Bullet dudes? What grade of school was that, or what year was that?
Um.
Or the people that would
Wow.
become the other Bullet dudes?
Yeah, I met them when I was probably around 8 years old for the first time. A lot of my family, well, one of my aunts and uncles and some of my cousins, they lived in Oakmore Vale, which is like the valley which is closest to where I used to live in Bridgend, and where all I would eventually come together to go to like high school with these guys. And yeah, and I remember meeting them through my cousins. I go to play dates with my cousins for like the weekend, and they'd be together just playing. And I remember meeting them when they were like 6, 7, 8 years old, something like that. So that was the first interaction I had with them. And then when we all went to kind of different kind of primary schools, so that when you get to the big school, all those schools came together, and that's where we met for the first time. And it didn't take long before we all came together as like a pack through the love of alternative music and heavy metal and stuff.
That's really cool. Where would you guys jam? Like whose garage was it? Whose bedroom was it? Or was it somewhere
Um,
else?
there was, yeah, there was. I used to live about 5 minute walk from the school that we all eventually ended up going to. So I had a drum kit set up in my garage and some amps and stuff like that. So we would go there during lunchtime and just fuck around and
Yeah.
just jam and stuff like that and have some fun. And then we had like a community center, like a youth club up in the valley, which we'd go like once a week, and they were kindly enough to give us a space to make some noise. Just again, we'd just bring a drum kit, bring some speakers and some amps, and we just fucking rip it out for 3 hours, just having fun. And people would come in and just sing and get little circle pits going and stuff. And yeah, it was just pretty much the same that I think anyone would do at that point in your life when you're like 15, 16 years old, and you've got real nowhere to go, but you've got this passion. So we just did everything we could to just try and find a space that would allow us just to make some noise.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of difficult to do that. Not a lot of people that would like are welcoming to that kind of volume of noise on a Wednesday evening. You know what I mean? But thankfully, we had a place to do that, and yeah, it was cool, man.
That's
Really,
really
really
cool.
special days. Man.
Would you guys play some of the local pubs, or would you play more community center stuff? Would you guys do any things like that, like
Yeah,
coming
man, we
up?
would we would play as many local pubs that would have us. We would play more kind of not softer stuff. We always kept it kind of like rock and roll. We chill it out to more kind of like Nirvana stuff and like that. A Metallica and Machine Head at that point would blow the locals' heads off. They would just wouldn't appreciate it.
Yeah.
But it was more just us getting together. It was an opportunity for us to play live again and just to have an audience of 5, 10, 15 people. That was magical moments for us. And that's how most bands learn their trade is by getting up in front of people in a local pub or a club or a community center and playing covers for the first time. I think it's
Absolutely.
super important that you just throw yourself into the deep end and just do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now take us to the path that started going up to the first release. How did we get there from here?
Well, it was just perseverance. Any opportunity we had to play a show, whether it was locally or we had to get in a van and go up and down the country, within Manchester, Birmingham, London, wherever there was a scene, and wherever we thought it was an opportunity for us to get on a stage and meet people, play some songs, try and build a community and a network of people that would, come together and help us on our journey as we could help them. And yeah, we just did everything we could. We sacrificed a lot in the early days before anything happened, but we were determined that's what we wanted to do. A lot of us sacrificed jobs, secondary education. All we wanted to do was be in this band and make something of ourselves in the industry, and we sacrificed pretty much everything. We were probably our parents' worst nightmare at this point. When we're like between 17 to 19 years old, we were a parents' worst nightmare.
Yeah.
We didn't give a fuck about anything else. We had a dream. We knew that given an opportunity, we could potentially do something. Even at that early stage, we knew that there was something. We just felt it. I mean, it's hard to describe. Um, and yeah, we just plodded on, and all of a sudden, the name started to have a little bit of a thing. We were doing some showcase gigs up in London in the old Barfly in Camden Town and stuff like that, where again they weren't huge gigs, but there was people there, and there was other bands there. And all of a sudden, you would start to network with people, and you'd get to hear that someone was coming from this label or a manager was there from this company. Um, and we just knuckled down and just got to work and just any opportunity we had to go to London, especially, we took it. Any competition there was, we were on it. Um, yeah, and we just sacrificed everything we could to make it happen and give ourselves the opportunities that we could.
That's really cool. Yeah, when you guys first came out on the scene too, it was crazy, like the shows you guys would be able to do, like doing Brixton that early in your career. And you mentioned the name as well. The name is really captivating. How did you come up with the name? What is the symbolism of the name, or is that meant to be a mystery? Because I've always found the name too. When I first saw it, I was like, oh wow, I want to know what this is about.
Yeah, it was just a break. Like we knew things were getting serious, so we needed a cool name. We were in a pub one night and we were just brainstorming stuff. And Bullet for My Valentine came up after a couple of different versions. I think the first iteration of it, which was kind of close, was Violence for My Valentine,
Yeah,
which is a pretty cool name.
yeah,
But we thought, man, that sounds a little harsh. And then I can't remember who said it. Myself or Moose was like, "We're about Bullet for My Valentine." I was like, I like that's like Guns N' Roses or Marilyn Manson. It's like
yeah.
pretty but like dark. And yeah, it stuck, man. And it's as far as band names go, we're pretty happy with it.
It's great, man. I mean,
It's
when
all
I
right.
think about it, like I can instantly think of like multiple merch pieces right away. Like I could picture like bullets laid across like a heart, like a Valentine heart that you'd give to someone.
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
just it's just all there. Yeah, it's really good.
yeah. Like I think as soon as we got on the name and things started to happen and we got a bit of a deal and we got taken on by a manager, we were kind of like, oh shit, the name was a slam dunk for PR and all that kind of stuff.
It really
It
was.
was
It really
it's kind
was.
of easy to kind of work the imagery into the name. It's pretty easy and strong,
Yeah, when we
which
first
is
had
which is
ours,
good.
I always wanted to change ours. Like once we started going, because it was originally founded by a different guy who had the name. I was like, man, no
Right.
one knows what kind of band we are from this name. And that's when I started getting into like the early 2000s metalcore bands or like the early 2000s kind of emo bands. They had all these long sentence names. And I remember
Yeah.
there was a brief moment where I think I brought up to Travis. I was like, hey, there's this really cool Converge EP called When Forever Comes Crashing. I was like, we should change our name to that. He's like, yeah, no. Then we just kept it. It's true. So it ended up working out, but I've always thought that your name is just like it's a gold mine for like
Oh, thanks,
visuals,
man.
which is cool. Because ours is like what the hell is a Trivium? So take us to those first couple shows once you guys started getting this fire growing with the band, and the fact that you guys did Brixton so early in your career. That's
Yeah.
still such a pinnacle moment.
Yeah, up to that point, then obviously before that we had an EP came out, which kind of got the party started big time, and it did incredibly well. It did better than anyone thought. And even on that, we had it was like a 5-track EP release, and then we sold out like I think it was like 1,500 people at the Mean Fiddler in London, which is where the Four Words to Joke Bomb video was filmed. Um, and it was like what is going on here? Like what is going on? Because we went from like Barfly 20 people to Mean Fiddler, which is like about 1,500. It was like shit. Okay, we had a camera crew then. We filmed the video, and we'd already kind of got the record deal up and running. It was like, oh wow, shit's getting real. And then yeah, the Poison came out. Our lives changed.
Yeah.
And before we knew it, we sold out an entire UK run off the back of a debut album, which included Brixton Academy, which is like, for people that don't know, like about 4,500 people, a prestigious venue. Um, and yeah, it was like, all right, I guess this is it. I guess this is us now. And yeah, it hasn't stopped since
Yeah,
20
it's
years later,
amazing.
you know. So it's been crazy, man.
Yeah, it's really cool because that was right around the time where we had no fans. Like we started in '99, we toured in the US, support all these bands. Nothing was really going. We'd sell a T-shirt, maybe a CD, and we flew over to the UK after doing kind of a disastrous co-headlining four-band flip-flop for Road Rage. It was Trivium, Still Remains, The Agony Scene, and 3 Inches of Blood. We were all rotating every single night in this tour, and we're kind of the odd man out on that one, and kind of didn't have a good time. Flew over to the UK, and we were standing there in the backstage. We were supposed to be the first band on that night. We're like, man, no one's gonna know who the hell we are. And then the crowd started chanting Trivium, and Wolverhampton started growing from there. And what we would do, we'd go to record stores, we'd go to magazine shops because we didn't have the same amount in the States, and we'd always keep seeing Bullet for My Valentine. That's when I first started listening to you guys, getting into you guys. And what's so cool about that time is you and I have talked about a lot, but for the audience to hear again, every time there'd be a magazine that had bullet excuse me, Bullet on the cover, it'd have Trivium as a special feature. And every time there'd be Trivium on the cover, Bullet as a special feature. And both bands just kept rising and blowing up. We'd bump into each other every once in a while on an award show or something. But it was so cool to see someone else carrying the flag for modern metal in the same way that we love to do. So that was such a really cool moment to see that. And yeah,
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's beautiful. There's a lot of, we've talked about a lot of the last couple of months. The similarities between our bands is pretty insane. You
yeah,
know, we basically have the same the same story, you know, from
yeah,
20 years ago. But it's a beautiful thing, you know. It's yeah, both Bullet and Trivium. Back when these albums came out, it was just an unstoppable media machine, you know.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and it was fucking crazy. It was crazy times, man. But looking back, so exciting, so unique, and so I don't know, special. You know, that's how it felt. You know, it felt really special.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's cool because, you and I, again, we've talked about this, but more for the audience as well. I remember when we were reminiscing leading up to this, before you guys hit us up, I was saying, like, man, I wish I could relive Ascendancy. I wish I could redo that. I wish I was more present for that. It was too fast. It happened too quickly. It was too intense. And then here we are, being able to relive this entire record in the proper way, in gigantic venues together with everything we ever pictured. It's just such a special time. Whenever I think of Bullet for My Valentine, I think of Trivium. I truly believe that our two bands have helped pave the way for all the countless bands of our genres and kind of genres that have splintered off from what we do over the last
Yeah.
20 years. And it's really cool being able to do that and to be able to do this together. So now that we've taken up to the Poison and the Brixton, where is Bullet going next? Like, I know we've got the Poison Ascendancy tour, but we're going to jump to the future real quick. What can you kind of give us? Where are you going to go now? Because I remember you mentioned, I don't know if I don't want to spoil here, but you mentioned a 7-string something, which I'm super excited about. Like, what are
Yeah.
some of the fun things you're thinking about coming up?
Yeah, we just want to keep things interesting. You know, we always like to kind of push ourselves creatively. We don't like to kind of regurgitate the same formula of writing songs and using the same sounds and stuff like that. We're a band that always likes to kind of progress or evolve is the right word, but just challenge ourselves creatively so it makes it fun and exciting when we get to the studio, you know. And you can always take it to a certain extent to the point where it gets super uncomfortable, and then just rein it in. But then at the end of it, then you've got something which is exciting and fresh, contemporary, and as the artists and the songwriters, that's what we get off on most is the challenge and how far can we push this creatively before we break it, you know, because you can always rein it back in. So yeah, so I've been messing around with some 7-string stuff recently, which is the first time I've ever done that. So that's going to be interesting to see if that makes it or not. You know, I don't know yet. It's early days, but there is a couple of songs where it's been used as an absolute weapon and it sounds insane. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, just more of the same. You know, we're a band that doesn't like I said, to regurgitate the same stuff. I always like to move forward. I want each album to have its own identity. The DNA of Bullet always has to be in there, obviously, but the band seems to creatively just go on its own journey, regardless if we're trying to or not. Anyways, you know, so it's something that we don't kind of hold back anymore. Which in the past we were very guilty of doing that, you know, because we were scared, we were worried about what people would think. And as the years and albums have progressed, and we've been more experimental and pushed the boundaries and pissed people off, it turns out that as much as you piss them off, they're still there at the
Yeah,
shows and
yeah,
stuff like that. So it's like, oh, okay. You can't please all the people all the time. The only people that we're trying to please are ourselves when it comes to writing music. And
Absolutely.
fans might not like to hear that, but I think that's staying true to yourself as an artist, and that's what you did in the early days, which got the fans on board in the first place.
Yep.
So it's something we're very. It's non-negotiable for us that we make ourselves happy before anyone else.
I'm into that. I think that's truly the best way that any artist of any format has to be. They have to make the things for
Yeah,
them, and takes you back to that most innocent, primal drive of why you did what you did. Right when I mentioned lower tuning and seven string, I saw a lot of the chat kind of freaking out a little bit, which is cool.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And I've always loved that too, that you've done what you wanted to do, because we've done the same. And there's only been a couple times in our career, I'd say like 3 or 4 records for us, maybe 3, where we set these limitations. And it's when we set limitations that it kind of made us not feel like us. And it was the times
yeah,
where we said, we know what we're going to do. We don't have to set these rules. We don't have to set these things. Let's just make what makes us feel good. And that's
yeah.
the key. And it's,
Yeah,
it's,
I
um,
think it takes being brave to do that, though, especially when you have success early on in your career. It's kind of scary to stray away from something that's a winning formula.
mhm.
A lot of people would just be like, well, let's try and do that again. But as soon as you realize that's not how this works as an artist, it's a very liberating feeling to go, you know what, that was sick, but let's try and do something else and make something sick again, and not just try and copy a formula that worked one time 10 years ago. Like fuck that, who cares? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's been so cool too over these last years. I'd say it's more in the last like 2 to 5 years that people have been coming up to me in bands that I'm a fan of, bands that you and I are fans of, that have been saying what an impact Bullet and Trivium have had, that we were the first bands that they ever saw in their lives. Talking to the Malevolence guys, like some of the first bands they ever saw was Bullet and was Trivium. And it's really cool that for our European tour, for our North American tour that we're all doing together, we're bringing out these new legions of metal bands that have established such this cool connection to the world. So it makes me excited to see where else this is going to go, and what new young kids are going to see Bullet and Trivium on this Poison Ascendancy run are going to want to pick up guitars and become bands that we get to listen to down in the future as well. It's a cool thing that we're able to keep kindling this fire of modern metal.
Yeah, man. I think the thing that excites me the most about touring, regardless if it's with you guys or on our own, is people still discovering our music. Like obviously, Poison Ascendancy is hitting 20 years old next year. So there's probably 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old people that weren't even born when these albums came out.
Yeah,
But now they get the opportunity to, if they're fans of our band, to come and relive a moment which they didn't even exist at the time. So it's cool that that's the gift of music. It doesn't stop. There's always going to be someone discovering it. Someone's always going to discover. People are always going to be like motivated by it and inspired by it, and to pick up a guitar, be in a band, whatever. Like it's the soundtrack to their life. I understand that because I had those moments with bands that I loved growing up, and it's cool. That's what music does. It's just the gift that keeps giving. It'll never stop. Long after we're gone, people are still going to be discovering the Poison, Ascendancy, Screaming Fire, all that shit. It
yeah,
doesn't matter.
yeah.
It's the gift that we live to leave to the world far after our demise. So it's pretty cool.
Absolutely, absolutely. That almost sounds like a record title to me. Yeah, I love too. And I listen back to the Poison Ascendancy because I've been studying those records a lot more since we talked about this. They're timeless. It doesn't feel like I'm transported back to that time in like in a critical way. In a good way, I
Yeah,
am of the memories, but it feels like it could live now. It could live then. It could live in the 80s,
yeah,
90s, 2000s, which is really cool. The cat's out of the bag. Everyone kind of knows what it is, but it's really cool that today we're announcing a North American run. Europe, UK is already announced. And as I keep encouraging people who are going, well, when are you coming to Brazil? And when not Brazil? And when about Brazil? We're coming everywhere. Oh, that sounds terrible. We're going to be everywhere. Sorry, Twitch brain. We're going to be everywhere in the world. We still have Australia to announce, and Southeast Asia, and Asia, and South America, and really wherever else people want us. They just got to keep demanding it and letting it be known.
yeah, man. Speak up, folks.
Yeah,
Because now's the time.
yeah.
There's only one shot for this. So if you want us to come, you need to make some noise. We need
Yep,
to know.
yep. We have a whole year just for Trivium and Bullet. It's gonna be awesome. Europe, UK, Orbit Culture, the States. We've got August Burns Red, Silosis, Bleed from Within. It's an insane bill, absolutely insane bills that we got everywhere. For your takeover, you had some really cool bands in there. What are some of the bands you're loving right now? Who are you listening to? Just so everyone can kind of get a shout out.
Yeah, I'm kind of listening to stuff that I'm being introduced to by my 14-year-old boy. Being a dad and doing what we do. I'm not. I don't go on a discovery anymore when it comes to music. I'm that's my 14-year-old boy's job to do,
That's
which
so
he
cool.
is. And so yeah, so it's cool, man. So it's like, and he brings stuff to me all the time. What do you think of this? What do you think of this? And some of it's my taste, some of it's not, but it's all of his age demographic and the world that he likes. So I think it was 2 years ago he introduced me to Alpha Wolf, for example. Kind of just as they were kind of just bubbling under the surface, and now they seem to be having a bit of a moment, which is fantastic. It's dirty and savage and down-tuned and experimental and great. So that's stuff that I probably wouldn't have discovered if it wasn't for my boy showing it to me.
That's
And
so cool.
yeah, man, he's getting into all the other bands that are blowing up right now, like Spirit Box and all that kind of stuff. The more mainstream is, if you call it that, because it's not. But all the younger generation of bands that are blowing up, Sleep Token, for example, and the Spirit Box, the two biggest I could probably think of the top of my head. But yeah, he's sucked in, man. He wants to do this as a career at some point too. So he's 14. Like his story already is kind of mirroring mine without any influence at all. It's crazy. So
That's
I'm super
amazing.
stoked.
You mentioned that I was having this thought the other day. I was like, I wonder if companies can be passed down to kids, estates can be passed down to kids. I was like, would a band ever live on from their kids? They technically could. Like, I think that'd be a pretty amazing thing.
Technically good. And it
Yeah,
helps if you've got a look like maybe Slipknot or something, that
yeah,
can blur the edges a bit, to carry
yeah,
the look over as well. So you wouldn't even know, I guess. But
yeah.
yeah, man.
But I feel
Yeah,
like,
he wants to do it. Like in what was it 20 March 2022, we did a UK and European tour. We ended in the Roundhouse in London, and Evan, that's my son. Evan came on stage and played a song with us when he was 12 years
oh
old
my
in front of a
gosh,
sold out Roundhouse.
that's
Yeah,
so
man.
cool.
Oh, it was a moment as a dad. It was like,
Oh
oh my
man,
God, the balls on the kid to get up there. And I gave him the guitar, so I just had the mic, and he just absolutely slayed the stage. He was insane.
man, I'm
You
such
know.
a parent now. That it made me tear up when you said it. That's just so
Oh
cool.
man,
Oh man,
honestly, it was. We documented it all. Our videographer was there and stuff, so we have a really good,
yeah,
proper kind of production version of it, just that we have for ourselves. Um, just as a moment for him as a 12-year-old kid to get up there, to get the balls to get up in front of a sold out London Roundhouse and jam with his dad and his band. It's like fuck,
that is
dude.
so beautiful. I love that, man. I can't wait. I
Yeah,
can't wait to
man,
do stuff like that. That's so
it was
cool.
such a moment.
It's funny. My son's been discovering stuff too. Like, he actually first showed me the Chainsaw Man theme. So I started getting back into anime because our guitar tech's huge into anime, and I was into it as a kid. But anime music is incredible. It's like this mixture of super weird, like experimental stuff and orchestral stuff and metal, but also drum and bass and electronic and EDM, all this stuff in one. He played this one song. I
Yeah.
was like, "What the heck is this?" And I fell in love with the song first. I didn't know what Chainsaw Man was. Looked into Chainsaw Man. It's too brutal for him. If your son's in anime, he'd like it. But now I'm obsessed with the song. And this song is like one of the biggest anime songs ever. And then he found this other really weird EDM song that starts off with "Bang Your Motherfucking Head." And my wife heard it. She's like, "Akira, you can't listen to this one." But it ended up being Shaq's DJ project. I was like, I didn't even know Shaq was a DJ, but it's this really super heavy, like it sounds like the Doom soundtrack, but with only synth.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so cool to see what our kids can discover. And Akira kind of found Powerwolf on his own just one day. Like we'll safely monitor him when he's like checking music out. And
Yeah.
Powerwolf became his favorite band. And so we did a festival with them, and I was like, "Hey, will you guys FaceTime my kids?" So they FaceTimed Akira while they're all in their corpse paint and their makeup and stuff. And it's really cool to see like what our kids get into and then how they can discover things for us. So I love that. I love that a lot.
Yeah, it's great, man. It's a magical moment to have that bond and your relationship with your children, anyways. But then for them to bring something to your life
Yeah,
is kind of a weird dynamic, but it's beautiful.
that's so cool. I'm hoping to bring my kids out for the London show. So if you've got your
Nice.
fam there, they'll all be able to meet.
Oh yeah, they'll all be there. The Welsh Massive will be in Cardiff
Oh, that's
for
awesome.
both nights and London. So yeah, they'll all be there.
That's
So yeah,
amazing.
definitely bring the family. It's going to be a moment for both our bands, man. They have to be there.
Absolutely,
You know,
absolutely.
have to be.
They've never done the long flight yet, and I was like, I wish I could help do the flight with them. But she was like, I got it.
Yeah,
But I think they'll be good. I think they'll be good. But it's gonna be awesome to have all their families out at that one because I feel like that's like the ultimate that show that London show is gonna be so big, so awesome. What a moment for both of our bands.
yeah, man. I'm excited. I'm scared. I don't usually get scared, but I got the butterflies already. We're 4 months out, and I've got the butterflies already. So
Man, it's awesome.
yeah, just another day at the office. That's the
Hell yeah.
attitude you have. I think.
Oh yeah, man. Well, I've said it so much to you. I'm gonna say it again, but thank you so much for doing this with us. Like I can't imagine a better friend to be doing this with, a better band to be doing this with. We're perfectly in line to do this
Oh man,
together.
wicked.
And man, Let's conquer, let's dominate. This will be the biggest and best tour we've ever done, and then onwards and upwards for both of our bands, and we'll reunite it 30 years, I guess.
Let's do it. Sounds good, man.
Hell yeah.
Thanks for your time today, man. Pleasure as always.
Absolute pleasure getting to know you, man. It's all these
Wicked,
chats and these hangs we get to do. It's even better and better every time, man. So thank you so much, Tuck. I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
All right, bro.
All right,
Thanks,
dude.
bro.
Later. Thank you so
In a
much.
bit.